Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, whenever you may be watching this video, this latest episode of Hotty Toddy Talk. He's Nick, I'm Austin, and quite frankly, let's just be honest. There's not much to talk about from this past weekend, at least not much positive. It was overall, quite frankly, an embarrassing weekend for Ole Miss baseball. The Friday night game was about as remotely close to decent as you could get for this weekend, but it was a comedy of errors. Particularly defensively for Ole Miss. 3 passed balls, 2 wild pitches. They left 11 men on base, 3 errors. And it was one of those games that, you're not going to win many SEC games with those numbers. And then Saturday and Sunday, it got ugly in a hurry. And Ole Miss was absolutely just brutally demolished in those 2 games. Nick, quite frankly, there's really no other way to put this. Kentucky baseball should not be beating Ole Miss at home. They should not be winning a series against Ole Miss at home, much less sweeping them. I don't care how improved they are. This is a series Ole Miss should win every single time.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and especially with how SEC play has started. I believe I saw it was like 26 of the 30 home teams have won series so far this season. So yeah. Outside of, there's probably a couple teams, I can see that should come into Oxford and win a series. But yeah, it was, and like you said, you nailed it. Embarrassing weekend. And I think kind of how Friday went, you have Riley Maddox's first Friday night start, and he does everything you could have asked him to do and had hoped he would have done. And then, the 3 unearned runs, which, don't give up those runs, you win the game. And I think just kind of Saturday and Sunday were kind of just kind of turned into a snowball effect. So yeah, not much positive this weekend at all.
No, and if Ole Miss had simply played clean baseball on Friday night, they are winning the first game of the series, and then things look a lot different. Instead, you give Kentucky that win; they've got a little momentum. And then guess what Ole Miss comes out and does on Saturday? They commit 6 more errors on Saturday. Just absolutely ridiculous. After taking an early 2-0 lead, they come out and commit 6 more errors. They end up giving up 17 runs on 18 hits in that game. Barely avoid getting run ruled in that game. Then, of course, Sunday's game. Oh, look, they cleaned it up defensively. They didn't commit a single error, but they still gave up 15 runs and got run ruled 15-1 in that game. This is a team in Kentucky that had the fewest home runs in the conference coming into the weekend, and Ole Miss gave up a myriad of home runs. Everybody on the team, I think, hit a home run. I don't know if that's entirely accurate. I'd have to look, but it felt that way.
It felt that way for sure, yeah.
It was one of those weekends. And look, Riley Maddox came out, and you're like, okay, yeah, they lost the game, not because of him, right, but you saw a positive sign from him. And then you're like, okay, well, you've got Liam Doyle on Saturday. You're going to be fine. The series will most likely be even going into Sunday. And then Liam Doyle had his worst outing of the year by far. Now, he didn't get any help from the home plate umpire, but that aside, it was flat. He only made it 2 2/3 innings. And it was after that. There was not a pitcher on the staff that could miss a bat for Kentucky all weekend.
Yeah, and kind of you talked about Doyle, and kind of with how well he's done, it's unfortunate, but you knew at some point this, kind of bump in the road start was probably coming. You obviously wished it wasn't at home against a team that, it's a winnable series, but, it happens. Like Mike likes to say, it's baseball, and it's true. It is baseball, but yeah, and 6 errors in a game, I don't care if you're playing varsity high school baseball, that's unacceptable. 6 errors, you got to play clean defense, because and then that turns around and the pitcher on the mound can't have confidence to throw the ball in the strike zone because they don't know whether or not you're going to field the ball cleanly. So, that the 6 errors definitely was not good at all. Like I said, unacceptable. And then just Saturday and Sunday were just kind of a snowball effect of, probably how they dealt with Friday night's game, if I had to guess.
Yeah. And you said the only word that can be used realistically, unacceptable, completely, totally unexcusable. You cannot be, and look, baseball is a hard game. I'm not sitting here saying that people don't make mistakes on the baseball field. Obviously they do. But 9 errors in 2 games in the SEC, unacceptable. You should not be on the field for the SEC program if you cannot field cleanly 98% of the time. An average fielding percentage in the SEC, if you look up and down, your worst fielding percentages are typically in the 970 range at worst. You cannot be having that many errors in a game. And at what point do you have to start looking at it? What is the real issue? What's going on behind the scenes that has made this team over the past 2 weekends completely lose all resemblance to the team we saw against South Carolina?
Yeah, I agree. It's like, and it kind of, I think I said it last show, kind of reverted back to how they were playing at the beginning of the season. And it makes you wonder, kind of what's going on, and everyone, whatever you want to do, speculate, question, whatever it is. It's just odd to see, with the team, especially coming out and getting your first SEC weekend series win. And then you obviously, and all due respect to Tennessee and Kentucky, but, Tennessee, you go in there, you get one that, probably the best, worst case scenario. And then and this past weekend was just like you said, kind of just an embarrassing weekend. So, and it doesn't get any easier next weekend, and we'll get into that. But it's definitely a head scratcher for sure. It's definitely a head scratcher.
Yeah, I mean, absolute worst case this weekend, you should have taken 2 out of 3. This is not. Look, I'm not discounting Kentucky baseball.
Right.
They are an improved team. They were leading the Eastern Division. There's no such thing as an easy series in SEC play. I get all that. But Kentucky baseball should not come into Oxford, Mississippi and win a series against Ole Miss baseball. It should not happen, period. Yeah. And it did. It not only happened, they swept them, and they swept them in embarrassing fashion. They scored over the last 2 games 32 runs over 2 games. Ole Miss scored 10 in those 2 games. Mm-hmm. It's just, I mean, it was flat out. Again, I saw this posted on social media by a few people. It's very, very, very dangerous to use the Q word when it comes to a baseball team at this point in the season. But Saturday and Sunday, it looked like they were there. I mean, if you're going to be completely realistic about it, and again, this is a show where we are very, very positive. All of you that have watched us for long enough know. And we at the Rebel Walk like to be very positive. We're not out here trying to slap these kids or these coaches in the face, anything like that. But there comes a point where you have to be realistic. It's just not everything is sunshine and rainbows. It's just not. And there is no way, period, to spin what happened this weekend as anything other than negative.
Yeah, I agree. And, it's kind of, but at the same time, it is, and I felt like in 2022, we were here, kind of at this point, and you turned it around. And so there is a chance, but if they're going to, we're at the halfway mark, this past weekend was halfway mark of the season. So, if they're going to want to get into that field of 64, there's definitely going to have to be some leadership in the locker room, and, some guys that are just going to have to, put their head down and go to work, and, whatever it may be, put on the blinders and just go to work every day. Because in baseball, that's all you can really do, and it's tough. It's a grind, You lose the way you did Friday night, and you have to turn around midday Saturday, get up early and play another game. And the same thing Sunday. And then they'll have an off day today, and they're playing again Tuesday. So, hopefully somewhere in between Tuesday and Thursday, they can find some kind of, confidence, some kind of energy that can, get them back. Because if you go to Arkansas and play the way you played this weekend, it's going to be easy to deflate. And, it can get ugly quick. So, yeah, you got to go into Arkansas, and at least you got to be competitive. I know Arkansas is really good, and you don't want to go in there, tuck your tail between your legs, but it is what it is. Arkansas is really good. You're playing them on the road. So it's definitely going to be tough, but it's just part of playing in the SEC.
Yeah. Well, real quickly, we will get to the positive from the weekend before we move on, because you guys are going to want to stick around, because we have some we're going to get into some discussion here that nobody really wants to have, but you're going to have it to an extent, especially right now. But before we do that, we will let you go ahead and let's tell us about the one positive from the weekend, the biggest positive from the weekend, and that's the player of the weekend. Well, we've touched on him a little bit, Nick, but obviously there was really only one choice from this weekend.
Yeah.
If you were going to have to pick one, and you have indeed nailed down your player of the weekend, go ahead.
Yeah, Riley Maddox. We talked about it. It was probably as much as you could have asked for him in his first, weekend start in an SEC series, and he goes out and gives you 5 2/3 and only gives up one earned run against, a respectable Kentucky offense. Not a team that slugs a lot, but like we saw, they got on base and just kind of the way they do it. He led off that game and hit a batter, and then you have a pass ball and you got to run on second already, and you've thrown 2 pitches, and that just was how their offense is. But yeah, 4 strikeouts, and one thing that stands out to me is the 11 ground balls he got. You see that sinker. Normally and he's talked about it. He gets in trouble when he leaves that sinker up, and so yeah, keeping that sinker down. I think middle of the game, around middle of the 3rd inning, beginning of 4th inning, kind of really started to settle in, and that sinker was working. So it's and going forward, you've got to have that from him Friday night if you're going to turn this thing around. So I think coming into this weekend, obviously with it being his first SEC start, you really weren't sure what you were going to get. Maybe holding your breath a little bit, but and it's just. And you want to be positive, but at the same time, it's when you have a guy go out like that on Friday night and only give up 1 earned run, pitch into the 6th inning, you got to win that game.
You got to win that game. Kentucky scored 5 runs, only 2 of them were earned.
Right.
1 earned run that Maddox gave up, and then the home run from Nichols.
Yes.
That was it. Everything else was a result of an error or a pass ball or a wild pitch. Again, Maddox did everything he could. And the Rebels defense did not support him and back him up. And then the offense, and the 9th inning, it was right there. Ole Miss had the bases loaded with 1 out, and their best parts of the order, coming up, it was Ole Miss it was right there. At minimum, they should have tied that game. You had the tying run at second with 1 out. At minimum, you tie that game, and they got nothing out of it.
Yeah.
And it's been all too familiar. It's been all too a familiar story. Leaving men on base, and 11 men left on base, and it set the tone for the weekend. Unfortunately, it was the wrong kind of tone. With that said, Ole Miss 3-6 in the SEC. They have a trip to number 1 Arkansas next weekend after Memphis this weekend, or this Tuesday on the road. They go to Baum-Walker Stadium, which is by far the most raucous environment in the SEC, baseball-wise. And with one of the best pitching staffs, if not the best pitching staff in the conference. Obviously, argument for Texas A&M is always there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You lose that. You get swept in that series. You're 3-9 in the SEC, and all of a sudden things are really, really, really going the wrong direction. Particularly with Mississippi State the weekend after that in Oxford. Which is a series that has not gone well for the Rebels, whether it be at home or away of late. So obviously, there's going to be talk about the coaching staff. Especially with the weekend that Ole Miss just had. We're not here to call for Mike Bianco's head. We're not here. Obviously, I have no information. Nick has no information. Keith Carter has not put anything out there. There's no indication that Ole Miss is going to make a change at the helm of Ole Miss baseball. That being said, it is clear Ole Miss, if I'm not mistaken, after this weekend is either 23-46 or 23-47 over the last 3 seasons in SEC play. That is well under 500.
Right.
If you put up a record like that as the head coach of the football team or the basketball team, you're out the door. You're gone. Well before that happens, you're gone. Now, granted, there's obviously a lot more baseball games than there are basketball games and football games. So obviously the numbers are a little bit skewed in that regard. But over the last, I believe, since Ole Miss won the championship in 2022, Ole Miss is 9-30 in their last 39 SEC games. That is a fireable offense for any school in this conference. If you're just being realistic, again, I am not up here saying Mike needs to go. This is not what we're saying. We are just throwing the numbers out there and saying around this conference, any other team, and they have proven it.
Right.
That coach is gone. Because I mean, Chris Lemonis is on the hot seat, Starkville right now.
Every other weekend. Yeah.
They won a game against Florida. They almost won 2. They won a championship a few years ago. Yes, they had the bad year afterwards. They've bounced back. They're nationally ranked right now. They beat LSU, and he's still on the hot seat with a better conference record over the last 2 years than Mike has. If you look around the conference, I mean, there are teams who have fired or are prepared to fire their head coaches for better conference records than Ole Miss has.
Right.
That being said, again, no indication from anyone that there is going to be a change made. So what we're going to do, if a change is made, obviously, okay, there's going to be hot boards out there. There's going to be names that you would like to maybe see. And then obviously you have names from the Bianco tree, or do you want to move away from that entirely? My personal feeling on it is if I don't want anyone to misinterpret what we're saying on this show tonight.
Right.
If there is a change made at some point, and if there is, I really do not see Keith Carter firing Mike during a season if he does.
Yeah.
But okay, who are the names that you would like to see? Nick, we'll start. I'll let you start. I know you and I have talked a couple times off air about maybe names we would put at the top of our list should there ever be a change made. But who do you got? If you had to pick like a few names that you might put at the top of the list to lead Ole Miss in the event that Mike does not lead Ole Miss after this season, who would you pick?
Yeah, I've got a pretty short list, and it's Cliff Godwin and Dan McDonald. Godwin from ECU, he was at Ole Miss previously, and then Dan McDonald at Louisville. So yeah, it's a short list for me, and obviously those are two coaches that are at smaller schools but at really good programs. So to go out and get a coach like that has a proven track record, I think is what you need. But there are some coaches at even smaller schools that are also there. I forget the guy's name at Campbell. His name has lost me, but
Campbell. Well, I thought I had him on here, but I did not. But yeah.
If and they've had a top 25 program, it seems, here for the last 2 or 3 years, and they're really competing, especially with what the kind of talent they get and that kind of stuff. So but I think personally for me, if you're going to go to getting what we've talked about, if it happens, I think you've got to go with someone that is familiar with the SEC. Because obviously with the transfer portal and NIL and all this stuff, it's a different animal, and you kind of got to know what's going to work in Oxford. So I think for those two, for me, are just kind of the short list, and then obviously I'm sure your list is probably a little bit longer than mine. Just I haven't really got into it much. I think kind of like you said, if there's a time and place for it to happen, it's after the season, because obviously you do it in the middle of the season, and the Q word is very much there. So it's definitely an off-season thing.
You do it in the middle of the season, and you're pretty much at that point resigning yourself to a bad season. And at this point, obviously, Ole Miss is not on the right track. But I mean, you're still early in SEC play. Right. There's still chances. Yeah. And again, I, to your point about being familiar with the SEC, I definitely understand that point. However, I don't think you're going to poach someone from another SEC school to come. I mean, they're not going to make a lateral move. Because last year we saw the name Tony Vitello thrown around a lot.
Yeah.
Tony Vitello is not leaving Knoxville.
Not leaving Tennessee. No.
It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. He's got it made. The only way he's leaving is if they fire him for not making Omaha. And you're not going to fire a coach who's getting you to super regionals every year and consistently bringing in some of the best talent in college baseball, particularly on the pitching staff. You're just not going to do it. Particularly with the money they're about to invest in that program. So put Tony V out of your mind. He is not coming to Ole Miss. It will not. I can say that without having any inside knowledge. With absolute certainty, Tony Vitello will not be the next coach at Ole Miss regardless. He will not leave Tennessee to coach Ole Miss unless it's because Tennessee gave him a pink slip. That's the only way he's leaving Knoxville. So Dan McDonald's having a rough year too. I mean, they're 17-11. They're 3-6 in the conference. They lost 2 out of 3 to Wake Forest. They lost 2 out of 3 to Florida State. I believe they lost 2 out of 3 to Virginia Tech as well. Yeah, they did, because that would be 3-6. So yeah, but everybody's going to have a rough year every now and then. Overall, Dan McDonald's done a great job. I do like Cliff Godwin as well. But again, Godwin and McDonald are kind of from that Bianco tree.
Right.
So I did have a few other names that just kind of, preliminary, like thinking about doing a little research, whatever. Because I think if you're going to look for someone, you go get somebody. And again, my list only consists of current head coaches. There are a lot of assistant coaches out there that I'm sure their names will come up too. But Pac-12 and ACC are the 2 places that I really look, because those conferences have perennially good Omaha teams. You look at a guy like Mitch Canham at Oregon State, for instance, who always has that team.
Right.
Really, really good. Beaver baseball is phenomenal. They've got the best leadoff man in the country by far. This season. It's not even close. Then you got a fairly recent team who has really come on strong every single year, and that's Clemson. They've got Eric Bakich. You look at Duke, who's been really good. Duke's head coach Chris Pollard, and then the other one I had was Tom Walter, of course, from Wake Forest, who obviously has their pitching they have is ridiculous as well.
Yeah.
There were a couple of kind of off the wall names I threw out there because I don't really. Link Jarrett left Notre Dame to go to Florida State. I don't know that he would leave Florida State to come somewhere else, but you never know. It is an SEC program. And then there was one kind of really off the wall name that I came up with, and that was Dan Hefner, who's the current coach of Dallas Baptist. So you got a smaller school who's not from another big-time conference, but DBU is a perennial postseason team. He's shown that he can get that team up there competing with the big boys. So that's just kind of, and you mentioned Campbell earlier. I don't have their coach's name in front of me, but that is also another good.
I just looked it up. It's Justin Hare.
Yes. So another good option. I mean, so if you can't get someone from the big time, you can obviously go to some of these bigger, mid-May. Coastal Carolina has a good team every year. I mean, you look at, there are teams out there who are good, who aren't from big conferences. Their coaches are phenomenal. They can recruit. And that's kind of the biggest thing, because Ole Miss is typically, they were for the longest time a perennial top 5, top 10 preseason team every single year. And really from 2022 on, they have gone downhill in a hurry. Yes, they bounced back in 2022. They won the championship, but they came into the next year with expectations much lower, and for good reason. They lost a lot of talent, and it's not been great ever since. Again, this is just conversation. But it's a conversation that's got to be had with the way things are going. The thing about it is this. If you as a head – and look, Mike has done great things for Ole Miss baseball. He's 3 wins away from 1,000 career wins. He's got 997 career wins. 887 or 897 of those have been at Ole Miss. I'd have to confirm that number, but I think it's 897. I'm pretty sure 100 of his wins came prior to Ole Miss.
100 at McNeese State,
So the thing about it is, when a game like baseball has evolved so much over the years, and particularly in this era that we are in of the transfer portal NIL, you must evolve with it. It's just non-negotiable. The pitching labs, the transfer portal, the NIL, the pitching coaches that are getting hired from Major League Baseball. People are leaving Major League Baseball teams to come coach college baseball as assistants. Like, that is where we are at. You must follow suit, particularly in the SEC. And because if you don't, baseball, the game that we are in now, that we are seeing, will leave you behind. That's just
100%. I can't disagree at all. When a game, and it's anything, it doesn't matter if it's sport, life, whatever it is, you got to be able to adapt. And it's and to your point, with Mike Bianco, and everything he's done for Ole Miss and everything, it doesn't matter to me if he never coaches another winning game at Ole Miss. Us Ole Miss fans are forever indebted to him. This is
absolutely
by no means saying it's just kind of part of life and stuff, that happens. And, it's sometimes just time to move on whenever that may be. I'm sure, Keith Carter will, as he's done throughout his time at Ole Miss, has really, kind of made some really good hires and really good decisions. So that I have no doubt that whatever is to come is going to be, I have full confidence in Keith Carter. But yeah, I think it's just kind of, and then I wanted to add on. I think whatever you do, you mentioned some assistant coaches. I think you've got to go out to get a head coach, someone that's been a head coach before. So that's another thing I wanted to add. And just it's a tough conversation to have, but like you said, it's just one that at some point you have to have, and it's just part of being real and not wanting to sugarcoat it, because obviously there's no way to sugarcoat what happened this weekend, and it's just part of the beast that is the SEC.
Yeah, the thing about Ole Miss is a desirable job. It is
100%.
a top team with top facilities in college baseball. Keith will, and I think Keith will. You have to act like it when you're going after a coach.
Right.
And then back to your other point, Mike Bianco, legend. I think I don't care how this season has gone. I still think they should rename the stadium. Mike Bianco Stadium at Swayze Field. I think they should. Now I know there are a lot of things that go into that, but I think you got to name. I think you name something after him. You put, I don't know, Mike Bianco Avenue, something. You do something for Mike. Build a statue of him. Something. But I think Mike is a legend at Ole Miss, forever a legend, and he should be remembered as a legend and the only coach to this point in Ole Miss baseball history that has brought them a national championship. That's just the fact.
Right.
That is, but again, and again, we know sports is very much a "what have you done for me lately?"
Scoreboard business.
That's how it is. But there comes a time when you just have to face reality and you have to face facts. And Mike is just too late in his career to change the way he's been for his entire career. Yeah. He's just not. He's very much. I don't want to compare him to Nick Saban loosely, but you know what I mean? Like Nick Saban retired in large part because he did not want to adapt to the new era of college football. And it was he's done what he needed to do. Mike is very much the same way. He's done what he needed to do. He's not going to start changing the entire way he coaches and the entire way he recruits. Yeah, granted, he used the transfer portal during this offseason. He did. But at some point, even that's just not going to cover all the bases, because you've got to have the support staff and you've got to invest in the players to a point that he is just not going to do because he's never done it. And that's just how it is. So you got to bring somebody in who understands how to use all the new tools and the new things and adapt to the new baseball game. And that, again, none of that should ever be interpreted as a shot at Mike Bianco, and I don't think it can be. But it's just realism, and it's just that's the way Mike is. And he's won plenty of games. He's had a great career. He's a Hall of Famer. But it's just the game changes. That's how it is.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like the old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's just kind of part of it. And you can only adapt so much to where Mike Bianco totally changes the way he coaches a team. He's not going to do that, because obviously what got him here was the way he's coached teams. So it's just kind of like I really like that analogy with Nick Saban. It's just kind of how college sports are changing here lately, and whether you like it or not, it's just what it is.
Indeed, it is. Sorry about that. I had a little mic problem there on the delay. But anyway, enough of that. Again, this is all just conversation. Look, Ole Miss still has a lot of season left, but it starts obviously Tuesday night with Memphis. But then you have to go on the road to number 1 Arkansas. Here's the thing: you get by Arkansas, you're 3-9 in the SEC with State on deck. You pull out one there, you're 4-8. It's still not great, but it's better than 3-9. And you've got a little bit of we went into the number 1 team with the number 1 state raucous atmosphere, and we pulled a game out. You get something out of that, and then you come back home to face your rival. The atmosphere at Swayze is most likely going to be, it should be insane, and you've got a real chance there. But you don't want to get the win just completely sucked out of your sails. So that's going to be the key. I certainly think that this weekend could potentially make or break how the rest of the season looks. I hate to say that, but if you finish this weekend at 3-9 and none of the game and you aren't competitive in those games at the same time, then you really start to have to wonder what kind of effort is going to be left, So we'll see what happens with that. Ole Miss will take on Arkansas at 6 o'clock, 6:30, and 2 o'clock Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series in Fayetteville this weekend. They are currently sitting at 3-6 in the conference. LSU 2-7, Auburn 1-8. So Ole Miss has a better conference record than those two. Mississippi State and Alabama are both 4-5. So, I mean, you look at the grand scheme of the SEC West, they're still not out of it. But again, only 12 of the 14. I'm sorry, only 14 of the 16. Is it 14 or 16?
So we're still at 14.
We're still at 14. I'm getting ahead of myself. We don't have Oklahoma and Texas left yet. Only 12 of the 14 make Hoover at the end of the season. So, again, you've got to start finding some wins somewhere. And they're not going to come easy, that's for sure. So again, Ole Miss and Arkansas going this Thursday through Saturday, and that'll be their first Thursday through Saturday series of the year. So it'll be an early series, and we'll have a chance to watch some Sunday games after that and see what else happens around conference. In the meantime, we will talk to you guys next time here on Hotty Toddy Talk. He is Nick at Nick Phillipich 11. I am Austin at Austin on Air 1021. We will talk to you guys again on the next episode of Hotty Toddy Talk. Have a great night.